You've probably been taught that Islam requires you to respect everyone, unconditionally, always. Politely absorb whatever someone does to you, because good character means turning the other cheek indefinitely. That's not actually what the Qur'an says. And the gap between what you've been taught and what the text actually teaches is costing you something. Your dignity, your boundaries, and in many cases, your peace. Here is the verse most people quote half of. Indeed, Allah does not like the public mention of evil except by one who has been wronged. Surah An-Nisa 4 verse 148. People stop there. They use it to argue that Islam wants silence, patience, endless tolerance no matter what is done to you. But look at what comes immediately after. And ever is Allah hearing and knowing. The verse is not commanding submission to wrongdoing. It is establishing that Allah Himself sees the wrong being done to you, and that this seeing changes the moral equation entirely. The wronged person has permission. The wronged person is not required to keep extending a respect that is not being reciprocated. This is the actual Islamic teaching that has been flattened into something softer and less true. Respect in Islam is not a blanket obligation toward every human being, regardless of how they treat you. It is a relationship, built on reciprocity, built on righteous behavior, built on the basic dignity that should flow in both directions. When that reciprocity is broken, deliberately, repeatedly, without remorse, the obligation to keep extending unconditional respect breaks with it. This video is going to walk through 7 specific behaviors that the Qur'an and Sunnah identify as disqualifying someone from the respect you have been taught to give automatically. Not as license for cruelty, not as permission to become someone who withholds basic human decency, but as a correction to a teaching that has been softened into something that leaves too many sincere believers absorbing harm they were never required to absorb. 1. When their words cannot be trusted. The Prophet, peace be upon him, gave us one of the clearest diagnostic tools in the entire Islamic tradition for identifying someone whose character has become compromised. The signs of a hypocrite are 3. When he speaks, he lies. When he makes a promise, he breaks it. And when he is entrusted, he betrays. Reported in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Notice what this hadith does not say. It does not say occasionally lies under pressure. It does not say sometimes exaggerates. It describes a pattern: speech, promise, trust. All 3 compromised, consistently, as a marker of a specific kind of broken character. Most people think lying is wrong because it offends some abstract principle of honesty. The deeper issue is what lying does to the relationship between 2 people. Speech is the medium through which trust is built. When someone lies to manipulate you, not an honest mistake, not a momentary failure under pressure, but a deliberate use of falsehood to control your behavior, your perception, or your decisions, they are not simply being dishonest. They are using the very tool of connection as a weapon against you. O you who have believed, fear Allah and be with those who are true. Surah At-Tawbah 9:119. The Qur'an does not say be patient with those who are false. It says align yourself with truth and the people who carry it. This is not an accident of phrasing. The Qur'an is making a claim about who deserves your proximity, your trust, your continued investment. The person who manipulates you with lies has made a specific choice to treat your perception of reality as something they are entitled to control for their own benefit. That is not a minor character flaw. That is the specific behavior the Prophet identified as one of the clearest markers of hypocrisy. And hypocrisy in Islamic teaching is treated with significant seriousness precisely because it operates through deception rather than open hostility. It is harder to detect and therefore more dangerous. You are not required to keep extending trust to someone who has demonstrated, repeatedly, that your trust is simply material for them to work with. 2. When they cannot honor a limit you've set. There is a specific kind of person who hears the word no and treats it as the opening move of a negotiation rather than the end of the conversation. Islam takes the concept of personal boundaries seriously, even though the language used to describe it is older and more specific than the modern vocabulary we use today. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught extensively about the right to privacy, the prohibition on entering someone's space without permission, and the obligation to respect what belongs to another person, including their time, their peace, and their explicitly stated limits. O you who have believed, do not enter houses other than your own houses until you ascertain welcome and greet their inhabitants. Surah An-Nur 24:27. This verse is about literal physical entry, but the scholars have long understood the underlying principle to extend beyond doorways. It establishes a theology of consent, the idea that another person's space, in every sense of the word, requires permission before you enter it. When someone repeatedly disregards a boundary, you have clearly and reasonably communicated. When "I'm not comfortable with that" produces another attempt rather than a stop. When "please don't" is treated as an invitation to keep pushing, they are revealing something specific about how they view your autonomy. Not as something that belongs to you and deserves honoring, as an obstacle to be worked around. This is incompatible with the basic Islamic principle that every human being possesses inherent dignity that does not depend on anyone else's permission. And we have certainly honored the children of Adam. Surah Al-Isra 17:70. That honor includes the right to determine the terms of your own space, your own time, and your own comfort. A person who consistently violates boundaries you have stated clearly is not simply being inconsiderate. They are contesting something the Qur'an has already settled. 3. When your generosity becomes their entitlement. There is a moment that arrives in many relationships, quietly, without a clear beginning, when something that was once a gift becomes something the other person believes they are owed. Islam places extraordinary value on generosity, and whatever good you do, indeed, Allah is knowing of it. Surah Al-Baqarah 2 verse 215. The believer is encouraged toward open-handedness, toward giving without keeping score, toward extending help without demanding reciprocation. This is genuinely central to the faith. But there is a difference between generosity that is received with gratitude and generosity that is exploited as a resource to be drained. The Prophet, peace be upon him, while teaching the importance of giving, never taught that the giver should accept being used. There is no instruction in the Sunnah that says, continue extending help to someone who shows no appreciation, who never reciprocates, who treats your kindness as a permanent feature of their convenience, rather than a gift offered freely. The specific marker to watch for is not whether someone receives from you. It is whether there is any acknowledgement, any reciprocity, any sign that what you give is recognized as a gift rather than assumed as an entitlement. When a person takes from your kindness repeatedly while showing no gratitude, no reciprocal care, no recognition that you are extending something they have not earned, they have transformed the relationship from one of mutual care into one of extraction. And do not consume one another's wealth unjustly. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:188. While this verse addresses financial dealings directly, the principle of unjust consumption extends to the consumption of someone's time, energy, and emotional resources without fair return. A person who consistently consumes your generosity without reciprocity or gratitude is engaged in exactly the kind of injustice the Qur'an is warning against, just in a form that doesn't involve money. 4. When they speak about you in rooms you're not in the Qur'an's language. About backbiting is among the most viscerally specific in the entire text. And do not backbite each other. Would one of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? You would detest it. Surah Al-Hujurat 49:12. This is not a gentle discouragement. This is the Qur'an reaching for one of the most repulsive images available to human imagination, consuming the corpse of your own sibling, to describe what happens when you speak ill of someone who is not present to defend themselves. The severity of the language is intentional. It is meant to register, viscerally, the actual weight of an act that has been culturally minimized into something casual. Here is what makes backbiting particularly corrosive, and why it specifically disqualifies someone from the respect you might otherwise extend. It is a betrayal that operates entirely in your absence. The person speaking against you does so precisely because you are not there to correct the record, to provide context, to defend yourself. It is a form of harm, specifically designed to be undetectable to the target, at least until it inevitably surfaces, distorted, second-hand, and already having done its damage. A person who engages in this consistently, who you have learned, through repeated discovery, speaks one way to your face and an entirely different way about you when you've left the room, has shown you something specific about the quality of their character. The face they present to you is a performance. The version of their opinion that exists when you are not present is the more honest one. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever believes in Allah and the last day should speak good or remain silent." Reported in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. The person who consistently chooses the third option not available in that hadith, to speak ill rather than speaking good or remaining silent, has revealed where they actually stand. And the Quranic weight given to this specific sin should tell you something about how seriously Islam takes the betrayal it represents. 5. When your pain registers as inconvenience to them. There is a quieter form of disrespect than outright cruelty, and it is often harder to name because it doesn't arrive as an attack. It arrives as absence, as dismissal, as the specific experience of bringing something painful to someone and watching their face register impatience rather than care. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was described by those who knew him as someone whose attention, when given to a person, felt complete. He would turn his entire body toward the person speaking to him. He noticed when companions were troubled before they said anything. His empathy was not a performed virtue. It was active, present, and consistently extended even amid the enormous pressures of his mission. And speak to people good. Surah Al-Baqarah 2 verses 83. This instruction is not limited to formal speech. It is a baseline expectation for how believers treat each other in the ordinary moments of daily interaction, including the moments when someone is hurting and needs to be received with attention rather than dismissed with impatience. When a person consistently treats your emotional experience as an inconvenience, when your grief gets met with eye-rolling, when your concerns get minimized before you've finished explaining them, when you have learned through repeated experience that bringing your pain to this person produces more pain rather than relief, that pattern is telling you something real about the relationship's actual structure. This is not about requiring perfect emotional attunement from everyone in your life at every moment. People are limited, distracted, sometimes simply unable to be fully present. That is human and forgivable. What is different is the pattern, the consistent, repeated experience of your feelings being treated as a burden rather than as something that matters. Islam asks believers to carry each other's burdens with compassion, not to treat each other's pain as an interruption to be managed and dismissed. 6. When their negativity becomes the weather you live in. This one is subtler than the others, and it deserves careful framing, because struggling with difficulty, expressing genuine hardship, or going through a season of pain is not what this is describing. Islam has deep compassion for genuine suffering and never asks believers to perform false positivity through real pain. What this describes is something different. A person whose default orientation toward life has become chronic complaint, chronic pessimism, a habitual focus on what is wrong that has become so persistent it shapes the emotional climate of everyone around them. And whoever is grateful for the benefit of himself, and whoever denies, then indeed, my Lord is free of need and generous. Surah An-Naml 27:40. Gratitude in Islam is not a personality trait reserved for naturally cheerful people. It is described as a spiritual discipline that orients the believer toward truth. The truth that Allah's blessings are present even amid difficulty, that hardship is followed by ease, that the believer's task is to hold both the difficulty and the gratitude simultaneously, rather than collapsing into one or the other. A person who has abandoned this discipline entirely, who has made habitual ingratitude and complaint their default mode of engaging with the world, is not simply having a hard time. They are modeling and reinforcing a posture that the Qur'an specifically warns against. And being consistently exposed to that posture has a measurable effect on the people around them. It is genuinely difficult to maintain your own gratitude and hope while spending significant time absorbing someone else's chronic negativity as the emotional backdrop of your relationship. This does not mean abandoning someone who is struggling. It means recognizing the difference between a person walking through difficulty with you and a person whose negativity has become so chronic that it functions as a drain rather than a connection, and recognizing that you are not required to give that pattern your unconditional respect. 7. When their word has stopped meaning anything. We already encountered the Hadith that named broken promises as one of the 3 signs of hypocrisy. It bears returning to with more weight, because of all 7 behaviors in this video, this is the one that erodes trust most completely and most permanently. A promise, in Islamic understanding, is not a casual social gesture. It is closer to a covenant, a small-scale version of the kind of binding commitment the Qur'an takes extremely seriously. And fulfill the covenant of Allah when you have taken it, and do not break oaths after their confirmation. Surah An-Nahl 1691. While this verse speaks to covenants with Allah directly, scholars have consistently drawn the connection to human commitments. The principle that your word, once given, creates an obligation that should not be treated lightly. When someone breaks their word to you repeatedly, not the occasional, honest failure that comes from genuine circumstance, but a pattern, a habit, a person whose promises you have learned not to plan your life around, because they simply do not consistently follow through. They have told you something true about how they regard their relationship with you. Your reliance on their word does not factor meaningfully into their decisions. This matters because trust is the actual infrastructure of every functioning relationship. Once it has been repeatedly demonstrated that someone's commitments cannot be relied upon, continuing to extend the same level of trust you would give to someone reliable is not generosity. It is a refusal to see what has been clearly shown to you. The Prophet, peace be upon him, modeled the opposite of this throughout his entire life. His companions described him as someone whose word, once given, was as reliable as anything in their experience. This was not incidental to his character. It was central to it. Central enough that the absence of it in another person was named by him as one of the clearest indicators of a broken moral state. What this actually means for you. None of this is permission to become hard-hearted. None of this is license to withdraw basic human kindness from everyone who has ever disappointed you, or to weaponize this video as justification for cutting people off the moment they make a mistake. What this is a correction. A correction to the version of Islamic teaching on respect that has been softened into something that asks too much of sincere people and too little of people whose behavior is genuinely harming them. Indeed, Allah does not like the public mention of evil except by one who has been wronged. That verse establishes the wronged person's permission. It establishes that Allah sees what was done to you, and it establishes, by extension, that the indefinite, unconditional extension of respect to someone whose behavior has repeatedly and deliberately violated your dignity is not a requirement of the faith. It is a misunderstanding of it. Respect, in the actual Islamic framework, is relational. It is built on reciprocity, on righteous conduct, on the basic dignity that flows both directions between two people who are genuinely honoring one another. It is not a one-way obligation.